Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Mattis. I'm going to be your AIM host during this session. I won't be on the whole time, but as you guys are coming in, feel free to use the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat during the session today. We should get started about 3:15. And I will also be, towards the end of this session, posting a link to a survey. Please give us some feedback about the session at the end of the session. We really appreciate your feedback. It helps us to continuously improve the conference moving forward every year. Hi, Deepak. How are you doing this afternoon? My name is Emily. I'm going to be here in the background. You won't have to see me the whole time, but if anything comes up or you're having any issues, I will be here in the session.
Yeah, before I'm trying to get my slides up, but it's not.
It looks like you're sharing your screen. Can you share like are you using Chrome to share to?
I'm using Firefox.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have like separate tabs? Oh, is it just a PowerPoint presentation?
Yep.
Okay. You may need to download it because it's easy. It's actually best to share it in a, oh, lost him.
Yeah. What you were saying, easier to share what?
It's typically in Hopin, it's easier to share. You can share an application. No.
Yeah.
When you practiced, did you share your screen with Excel?
I mean, it says here you can share the talk, and I'm trying.
Yeah, but is it in PowerPoint or is it online, the slides that you have?
It's PowerPoint. It's PowerPoint.
Okay. Just a second. Let me troubleshoot this on my end to make sure that we can get this to work.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I guess I can't see myself, but I can see the slides, so that's good.
No worries. If something's coming up, just shout me out, and I'll make sure that I'm watching the chat. I've got everything on this end, so I'm here.
So will you read any questions that I get?
Yes.
Okay.
I can definitely pop in with questions for you. No problem.
So when do you want me to start? Let's start right now.
You can start right now. That'd be perfect.
All right. Thank you, Emily.
Of course.
Welcome. My name is Deepak Khazanchi. I'm a professor at UNO, and I'm going to share some of our work on how artificial intelligence and machine learning is revolutionizing the way we think of project management. If one of the goals of one of the reasons for giving this talk at Infotech is to kind of stimulate discussion and also maybe see if there is interest in the business community to share data relating to projects so we can develop models in machine learning and AI to help solve business problems. So with that said, basically there is clear evidence that, you know, in terms of market demand, that the global artificial intelligence market is going to grow to about 126 billion. A lot of people, Gartner in fact predicts that by 2030, as much as 80% of routine things, routine work, routine processes, routine activities, which represent the bulk of what we do as human beings, will be eliminated using automation. That in my mind, that is really to say that in project management there are many activities that can actually benefit from automation through the collaboration between human beings and smart machines. What our thinking is that, you know, today's practices need to kind of be reconsidered or reevaluated to see how we can reduce our dependence on human input. And so what that tells us is that, you know, the way we do project management today is highly dependent on how we collect, organize, and consume information in our decision making. But that seems to be, with the advent of AI and machine learning technologies, that seems to be kind of not an optimal use of our abilities as human beings. We are more intuitive and creative in our abilities, and for us to be innovative and critical in decision making, we need to kind of leverage technology and transfer some of the routine tasks to machines and use our creative abilities to solve more complex problems. So that's kind of the basis of my talk. And just to kind of back up and explain AI a little bit, because a lot of people confuse these terms together. And in our view, machine learning is basically the idea that machines can be adept at and fast at learning and adapting problem solving tasks through experience. So as machines learn just like human beings, we can make better models to address and support decision making. But AI is a much more broader term, and I think people confound the two together. But AI is just any aspect that relates to machine learning, deep learning, even data mining that help us solve real problems. So deep learning is just a subset of machine learning, and some of us who are familiar with data mining or data science or data analytics, these are just offshoots of activities in machine learning and deep learning. So broadly speaking, AI is this kind of super discipline that includes all of these. So from a project management perspective, what we propose is that there is this intelligent project management, which would include the ability to leverage artificial intelligence, both in the form of robotics or bots and in the form of machine run models that will automate routine tasks and also help with some non-routine tasks in terms of inference and insights, and even make recommendations to project managers that couldn't have been possible in the past based on the history of a project or a collection of projects. So given that, what we want to also emphasize is that there is a little bit of a confusion also about automation and learning and the relationship between the two as it relates to artificial intelligence. So just to make this distinction before I jump into how we can help in project management, machine learning is really useful in automating processes, but not all automation problems require learning. So, you can automate a process without actually having a learning element to it. Whereas automation without learning is appropriate when your problem is kind of routine, is pretty well structured, and tasks are very well defined and are in sequence. And that currently we use human beings and can easily be transitioned to a machine. So this kind of thing happens all the time. But learning is more about also adding this component where the machine also learns from experience and improves upon the way the task is handled right now. So that's an important distinction that needs to be made. So for us to really appreciate how AI can be applied, one needs to understand that it just depends on the nature of the project management task or activity. Humans can typically create one or two models. We have a bounded rationality, whereas machine learning can model many different scenarios and spit out advice and insight based on those scenarios. So there may be tasks that are repetitive that need automation. So generally repetitive tasks, for example, data entry, project scheduling, cost estimation, these are repetitive tasks. Generally there are formulaic or routine ways of doing them, and these are very amenable to automation without learning. So it's a relatively straightforward aspect of project management. Then there are complex tasks that are amenable to artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. For example, if we want to look at the history of risk assessment or the history of cost assessment, and then try to predict the risk or the cost of a project in the future that we take on based on those experiences, then we could look for patterns that can then be applied to a new project. So this is what we mean by complex tasks. And then there are those decisions that I would call difficult decisions. And in this case, we are talking about using both real-time and historical data, some form of a knowledge repository, to assess and respond to dynamic changes in a project. So this means that, hey, we have a change in schedule, and what does that do to our projected cost? What does that do to manpower allocation? Or we have other kinds of problems that relate to projects, and I'll give you some examples. But basically, in most of these cases, we need to learn a little bit more about what this task is based on history, and then try to make some predictions about what we would see with a new project or new activity. So this requires some learning, and the machine needs to learn and build models of that knowledge to predict something in the future. So that's artificial intelligence application to the different kinds of tasks that we might face during project management. So here are some examples of things that we could address.
Deepak, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you. I don't think you're actually presenting your PowerPoint. We're not following along on the slides. I can see the preview for your PowerPoint, but I can't. There we go. I can see it changed a little.
What do you see now?
I scrolled down to the PM and AI, some examples of open-ended research questions.
So it's not really showing you the
It's
slides.
not presenting through when you click through.
Oh, well, what do we do?
Oh no. It did work though when you scrolled down, because I could see you scroll through, so I can see the preview for the slide.
Oh, like this.
Yeah.
You can see that. Okay, I can show that.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So do you want me to continue from where I was?
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I knew you were presenting something and I wanted to make sure that everyone could see it.
Okay, cool. So basically, what we are trying to say is that we can essentially solve many project management problems that are both routine and non-routine through automation, but it doesn't replace the human judgment that a project manager or an experienced project manager provides. So what machine learning can do is it can be used to improve project management. For example, we can use artificial intelligence ML techniques to predict, among other things, things like, well, will the project be developed in time? Will there be a delay? Can project management software incorporate tools that know how good people are in an area and actually help us assign teams in upcoming sprints? So you can actually do some real-time modification of team members based on how they have performed in tasks before. Or the most important question, can we proactively predict project failure and propose adjustments to project plans? So this is something that we all struggle with in technology projects, but also in construction projects. Other types of questions that can be addressed through machine learning relate to things like, can we be more accurate in the estimation of size, effort, resources, cost, and time spent in software development based on what we have done in the past? So one could potentially imagine using neural networks and other machine learning techniques to build predictive models for estimating these kind of factors on new projects. So what is needed is really historical data, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to present at Infotech, to kind of see if there were companies that were interested in sharing anonymized historical data so we could build these kind of models. Can machine learning be used to effectively analyze team behavior patterns? So this is something that kind of relates to something I said earlier. I mean, you could potentially use the success of a team as a whole or individual team members as in terms of their skill set, and based on their strengths and weaknesses, you could actually even use a machine to start delegating tasks to teams or team members to make it more efficient. And it is possible to create models like that based on historical success. So similarly, we could use machine learning to analyze performance data to see how we are doing in a task or how we are doing in a project, and see where the bottlenecks are. Well, how is that affecting our cost, and kind of predicting or even foreseeing the kind of problems that these kind of things, these kind of bottlenecks would create. The other question that I have there is, can machine learning tools be used to analyze project data to give advice about resource assignment? So here's another area where we think that there is enough data in companies about projects that can be used to build models about how to allocate resources. So based on skill levels, performance on a task, and the current context. So these are some examples of questions that can be used to create what I would call intelligent project management. It still does not impact the need of a project manager. It just changes the kind of role a project manager plays, in the sense that the project manager then focuses on more routine things or more non-routine kind of tasks, more complex tasks, whereas the routine kind of things are handled by a machine. So this is kind of our proposal, and we are currently working on developing these kind of ideas in the form of models that can be implemented in a machine and also implemented for decision-making support of project managers. So if you think of the traditional project management stages, things like project planning, initiation, execution, all these phases have elements of both routine, non-routine, complex, semi-structured tasks that can be addressed through various types of machine learning techniques. As I said, more procedural tasks can be handled by tools like robotic process automation or chatbots and more. Whereas we can have other kinds of tools that allow us to do things like notification on tasks and notifications about delays in tasks automatically. So kind of building some agents that help with the project management process. So we have thought about which stages and which kinds of tasks in project management are amenable to artificial intelligence. And we feel that one area where this is very applicable is in complex tasks, where some tasks can be automated, but some of the more complex modeling can be done with a machine, and those insights based on experience, based on modeling, can be used by the project team to make more efficient and effective decisions. So that's kind of my presentation. I was hoping that we would have some questions. Emily?
Yeah, if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat and I will relay them. Be a great time to enter them in the chat. Looks like we've got a shy, oh, there we go. We've got a question. What tools are you using to track resources or workload?
Well, we are currently trying to understand how we can get historical data, first of all, and then we would use machine learning techniques depending on the kind of problem we want to predict. For example, we are very interested in predicting success and failure, for example. So we would need to get historical data about projects, and we're trying to collaborate with companies to get that data before we predict. So we basically use the foundational tools in machine learning, not just some service out of, so we use the actual algorithms, I guess is the best way to say it. We don't use any service that is provided through Google or Microsoft or other kinds of entities. Right now we are basically focusing on more foundational research in this area.
Looks like we've got another question. Does machine learning lend its way to agile project management as well? Can you explain with a couple of examples?
Sure. So, for example, in agile, it is possible if you have historical data, for example, about, say, you have created stories and you have that in your Kanban setup, and you have realized that some stories are more complex than others, and you can predict that they are, based on your experience, that they are complex enough that they might result in delay or may need to be split up. Well, that's a simplistic example, but that is possible to be automated if we have a history of examples of stories that are of different abstraction. One of the biggest challenges in Agile is that people write stories that are at different levels of abstraction. The other thing in Agile that is possible is just the idea of how do you predict our cost that is associated with an Agile project. So if we could look at cost models that have been historically used and related to success or failure of projects, or match it to what projects currently have costs based on the estimations, then we can potentially build models that can predict if those costs are likely to change or would be different in another project. So depending on what aspect of the Agile life cycle one needs to address, there could be different ways to address it through automation. I mean, on the simplest level, one could think of a routine task where you are getting a customer's okay on your current state of the project. I mean, right now we are getting that as a feedback or as a change form or as a approval. Well, you could use RPA kind of processes to set that up where it's done electronically. So it just depends on where in the process one needs to address these challenges and then try to address them by modeling them in machines. Now, all of this is highly dependent on the quality of historical data one gets. So none of this can happen without collecting history, project history.
There was a question about whether or not the PowerPoint would be available to share with the group.
Yes.
Perfect.
I have put a PDF in the shared folder.
Oh,
Emily,
perfect. Yes. Okay. You're ahead of me. Yes. All of the materials will be shared with participants. I believe that we're sending them out Monday, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, a PDF of the slides is available through that. Yeah. And if anyone in the audience who's there is interested in collaborating on this in terms of at least helping us access data or look at decisions that are complex and that are hard for project managers today, we would love to talk to you and see if we can work collaboratively on developing some machine learning models.
Are there other questions? Please feel free to put them in the chat.
I went through it real
fast. No, you're good.
It's very hard to talk without seeing an audience.
Yes, that is the one down. We have used this platform, enjoy it. It's difficult because you don't really have participants able to show themselves in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, if they have questions at another time, what is the best way for them to contact you?
My email is just my last name at unomaha.edu.
Perfect. If you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out. That he would be happy to work with you. It's a great presentation. I have put a link in the chat to a survey. Please take a little bit of time to give us some feedback. We really appreciate the feedback from our participants. That helps us to continually improve.
Emily, is that it, or should I hang out? Or?
If you would like to hang out if questions come up, but I don't think that I have any other expectations from you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
My apologies.
Oh, no,
Thanks.
it's great.
Thank you. Bye.